He could have been with Japan. Oh, Olympic sport. Korea would keep reading newspaper while pretending it's cold. This is a thesis. Everyone else is just a autopsy. This isn't about Japan. Japan doesn't get attention. This is about Weeaboo, the deluxe sports version and the domestic Korean model. What's convicted? That's anti-delusion. He go inside. One group buy plane tickets and anime movies. The other eye is wholesale and resell them as identity. Different answers. Same delusion. We have don't study Japan. They consume it. Selectively. Guilt part only. Clean streets. Blood smile. Vending machine. Without drink. The message have get corrupt parts like butt, hex, being on Instagram. What? Korea's version is worse because it's come with historical amnesia and spirituality complex that stayed together. Not mixed with denial, always done actively. Let's stop pretending this is about taste. Liking anime isn't the crime. The crime is what comes after the liking, when curiosity quietly mutates into identity replacement. A weeaboo is not someone who enjoys Japan. A weeaboo is someone who uses Japan as emotional outsourcing. Life feels mediocre. Society feels hostile. Dating feels impossible. So they download a country instead. Preferably one that looks clean, quiet, and obedient from a distance. Notice the pattern. Weeaboos don't obsess over Japanese tax policy, elder poverty, dead malls, or the work culture that eats people alive. They obsess over high school uniforms, convenience stores, and the fantasy of being treated politely. Politeness, by the way, is not kindness. It's a protocol. Confusing the two is how tourists end up shocked and offended 6 months later. Now here's where Korea enters, tripping over its own contradiction. Korea mocks weeaboos publicly while practicing a quieter, more embarrassing version privately. Anime is childish. Japan is declining, we say. Then we turn around and fetishize Japanese minimalism, Japanese women, Japanese silence, Japanese order. Hate on the surface, longing underneath. That's not nationalism. That's unresolved attraction pretending to be pride. Korean-Japan obsession isn't loud like the Western version. It's bureaucratic. It hides in study abroad fantasies, YouTube vlogs, marriage myths, and career delusions. Japan is structured. Japan is safe. Japan respects rules. Translation: I hope another country will fix what my society broke in me. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Weeaboo culture survives because it offers a lie that feels merciful. But somewhere else, discipline is gentle, women are kind, men are respected, and life makes sense if you just bow correctly and shut up at the right moments. Japan didn't sell this lie. People exported it themselves, and the algorithm loves it. Cute thumbnails outperform ugly facts, fantasy scales. Reality does not. If this chapter annoyed you, good. That means you're still reachable. If you want chapter 3, subscribe and like, because discomfort without momentum dies fast. And if you buy the products below, you're not funding escapism. You're funding a channel that keeps ripping the wallpaper off the walls. Now it gets ugly, so naturally this is where people start lying to themselves. Korea's obsession with Japan is not admiration, it's resentment with benefits. A strained relationship where Japan is simultaneously framed as inferior, immoral, declining, irrelevant, and yet somehow still powerful enough to haunt Korean identity decades later. If Japan truly didn't matter, nobody would talk about it this much. Indifference doesn't scream. Obsession does. Here's the contradiction nobody wants to sit with. Korea wants Japan to fail, but not too much. Total collapse would kill the fantasy. You can't feel morally superior to rubble. So Japan must remain functional, aesthetic, and vaguely successful enough to serve as a comparison object, a foil, a mirror that Koreans stare into while loudly claiming they're not looking. This is why Japanese pop culture is tolerated but never fully forgiven. Anime, fashion, design, food, all acceptable as long as they stay depoliticized and infantilized. Cute Japan is fine. Adult Japan is threatening. Structural Japan forces questions Korea doesn't want to answer about work, hierarchy, aging, and conformity. So we freeze Japan in a permanent youth phase and call it culture. And then there's the personal angle, the one nobody admits out loud. Japan becomes a psychological exit ramp. For Koreans exhausted by hyper-competition, beauty tyranny, and social surveillance, Japan looks like quiet, order, predictability. Not freedom, but relief. That relief gets romanticized into destiny, until reality shows up with low wages, isolation, glass ceilings, and the sudden realization that politeness does not include you. At that point, the narrative flips. Japan becomes cold, racist, outdated. The fantasy breaks, and instead of admitting the fantasy was fake, people blame the country for not performing the role they assigned it. That's the cycle. Idealize, migrate mentally or physically, collide with reality, retreat, and rewrite the story so the ego survives intact. This isn't about history textbooks or diplomatic statements. This is about psychology, about how societies project their unresolved conflicts onto neighbors and call it opinion. Korea doesn't hate Japan. Korea hates that Japan exists as proof that modernity can look quiet, stagnant, and still functional. That scares people who were promised constant growth and endless ascent. If this chapter made you defensive, congratulations. That means you recognized yourself somewhere in it. If you want Chapter 4, subscribe and hit like. Because platforms reward noise, not nuance. And if you buy the products linked below, you're doing something radical. You're keeping a channel alive that refuses to comfort lies or sell cultural bedtime stories. Chapter 4. The weeaboo trap is comfortable because it excuses failure. Let's end this cleanly, without mercy. Weeaboo culture survives because it offers a painless explanation for disappointment. Life didn't turn out the way you were promised. It's not your choices, your system, your society, or your timing. It's because you were born in the wrong country. Somewhere else people are refined. Somewhere else women are gentle. Somewhere else men are respected. Somewhere else the trains run on time, and so will your life. That somewhere else just happens to be Japan. For Western weeaboos, Japan is a decorative escape hatch. For Korea, it's worse. Japan becomes a psychological control group, a country close enough to compare, distant enough to mythologize. When Korea succeeds, Japan is mocked as stagnant. When Korea suffers, Japan is envied as stable. Heads I win, tails I don't have to think. Here's the part nobody wants to admit. Obsession with Japan lets Koreans avoid talking about Korea, about burnout, about conformity, about how brutal the ladder really is. It's easier to argue about anime fans and historical grudges than to admit that the system is grinding people down and calling it patriotism. Weeaboos don't threaten society because they love Japan. They threaten it because they refuse reality everywhere. They believe culture is a costume you can wear to escape accountability. They think liking the right country will redeem a life they don't want to examine. Japan isn't a utopia. Korea isn't a victim. And obsession is not insight. It's procrastination disguised as taste. If this series pissed you off, that's fine. Anger is still engagement with reality. Silence is surrender. If you want content that doesn't kneel to fandoms, nations, or algorithm-friendly lies, subscribe and hit like. Numbers are the only language platforms respect, And if you buy the products linked below, you're not buying junk. You're funding a channel that refuses to romanticize decline or sell comfort wrapped in foreign aesthetics. This was the truth about weeaboos and Korea's obsession with Japan.